Hi everyone out there, welcome. Jane again for part 3 of the Atom Audio 3-part webinar series. Excuse me, just getting comfortable there. I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to join. Give us a shout, give us a comment if you're out there. How are you managing in the heat, all of you Europeans? Not used to the summer. I'm not used to the summer anymore because I've been living here for so long. I love the heat. It's good stuff. Third time's a charm, Travis. Yes. Nice to see you back, mate. Etienne. Hello again. Lovely to see you. Givenchy. Oh, I wish you could just like turn on your mic and tell me how to pronounce your name. Hey, what's up? Nice to see you. Nokine. Hey, Caroline. Conan. Yay. Good stuff. All right, so let's dive in. This is a really fun webinar. It's after the slog of the first 2 webinars. We kind of get the payoff where we start to hear beautiful sound, hopefully beautiful sounds. Hey there, Andres. Lara, what's up? So we're focusing on vocal production and mixing, and you know, the things that we've been talking about in the last 2 weeks are going to kind of I'll be referring to some of these concepts and throughout the session today. Hey, we got Paige had to shower for the 3rd time today. Good stuff. Got to keep clean and fresh, right? And Darren, what's up? How you going? Okay, so getting into the vocal production and mixing. Let me just get my notes up, and as Anna's saying there, as always, just throw in the questions whenever you have them and I'll get to them when I can. Hey Raz, what's up? And also I believe we have the Focusrite BX giveaway is happening again today. Maybe Anna, you can confirm in the chat if that's the case. So one of you lucky people is going to get that as well. Ollie, hey Ollie, how's it going? Okay, so enough hellos. We're down here to do business, so let's do it. All right. So yeah, as I said, part 3, vocal production. Woo! I really love vocal production. I am a singer. I'm a choir girl from way back since I was like 5 or something like that. So vocals have always been a really important part of making music and communicating sound for me. And you know, obviously, whether we like it or not, I've had a theme of giving shit to the bass players. So, you know, we like to think that the bass is the most important, and the guitarists like to think the guitar is most important, but the unfortunate or fortunate reality is that really no one listens to anything but the vocals. Everything else is to support the message and the intention of the melody and the meaning of the lyrics and the emotion that comes through the performance. So this is the most important thing to get right. There's not a lot of theory today. There's not too many slides. It's mainly, I'm hoping to really sit in the door a lot and give you lots of examples, and we can kind of have a chat through all those kinds of details. This is what we're doing. So we're going to start off with lead vocal. And look, I want to talk a little bit about recording a good vocal, because it's no good producing, well, you can still fix a bad vocal, but it's a lot easier if you just get it right from the beginning. Then talking about editing, which is really important, that again, a lot of people kind of forget and they just go straight to processing. So editing is a really, 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 really big part of getting a very professional quality vocal. So I'm going to talk about that. And then of course, processing. Then we're going to talk about backing vocals specifically, have a little chat about arrangement, vocal arrangement, maybe a quick check-in about recording backing vocals. Are there any differences or things to think about? Spending time talking about editing BVs, and then, of course, processing BVs. Then the final section is, as I promised, we didn't really talk about spatial design last week. So I said we're going to hang it over till today. And it really makes sense, because a lot of the kind of exciting and in-depth things that you do in spatial design really revolve around the vocals. Other instruments obviously take a part as well, but using vocals, it's a really good place to talk about spatial design. And then I'm going to give like my reflections on the common issues that I see that happens with vocals in a mix. I think, just as an aside, I think, and I was like this, and I don't know if anyone else out here kind of has the same vibe from this, but I used to do bottom up. Now, remember in week 1, we're talking about bottom up, top down, different approaches to mixing. I used to always do bottom up, and I would find quite often that by the time I get to the vocal, I was so exhausted and fatigued and kind of over it that I was just like, the vocals annoyed me, and I often didn't do a really good job, to be honest. The reality is that the vocals need a lot of attention to get right, in my view. So this is a moment that if the vocal is super important in your track, I would encourage you potentially go for a top-down approach. Give all your, when you're fresh and excited and ready, really put in your attention into the vocals and build the rest of the tracks around it. So check that out anyway, see what you think. I'm just going to check in on the chat and see if we've got any questions or anything coming up yet. Nothing yet. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll see. I'm just going to dive in. Okay. So lead vocals, let's put that on. So in lead vocal, recording a good vocal. Okay. So this is just a little chat before we get into the door. So this is, to my mind, these are the things that you really have to think about. And if you're not thinking about all of these things when you're recording, please note these down and think about it in the future. So obviously microphone selection is super important. To say to that, don't always go for the U47. I know that that's the intent, the kind of tendency when, particularly when you first start out in a studio, is to go for the C12 or the U47, you know, or the U87. But I think that I would really, if you have time, and particularly if when you're studying at university, if you have the rooms, do vocal shootouts, do mic shootouts. So you get a, you know, four or five different mics and check it out and see what the results are. So just to that, this is a little interactive question. What is your favorite vocal go-to mic? So if it's a U47, you can say that, that's cool. No hating here. But yeah, what's your favorite vocal mic that you find that works really well? Maybe on a female voice, or maybe you've got a particular one that seems to work well on male voices. Let me know if you've got any what your favorite mic is. I'll check in on that in a second. So the second thing, which I think is really important, which is really fun, is about microphone and preamp matching. And, you know, this is not a recording webinar, but I think that that's really fun to think about. You know, if you're going for something that's a bit more gritty and kind of gutsy, things like a Neve style preamp would work really well. If you're wanting something that's more smooth and kind of like hi-fi pop or something, maybe Avalon would work better. Or, you know, so thinking about how your preamp and also the impedance, thinking about, the impedance and the way that impacts the output gain, but also the timbre that's of the sound that is generated. So playing with those kinds of things can be really fun. Before you get going. Of course, room and positioning, like if you're in a proper studio, you should be fine, but most often people are not, right? So we're at home. So you really need to think about this a lot more. And particularly if you're in a room that's like a bedroom or that's like a home room, that's the dimensions of rooms in houses have a tendency to accentuate the kind of 200 hertz standing wave. So I've done vocals at home because I wanted the kind of intimacy of vocals at home, and I wanted to be able to record like at 2 a.m. in my pajamas or whatever. That was really important for the energy and the vibe. So I was willing to sacrifice kind of professional quality because I knew I could fix it, right? But I wasn't really ready for how much 200 hertz boost. I was just carving it out, like being really aggressive in cutting it out of the recording. So be mindful of that. That's a hot tip. A lot of people don't realize how much of that 200 that the room brings in. So to that, think about your positioning and move around and, you know, listen. It's always about the ears. Find the place in the room where when you listen through, the vocal just feels nice. Okay, so take a little minute before you just dive in and start doing takes. Setting the mic levels obviously is really important. Another question for you I'm going to check in on, what is the level? Remember in week 1, we're talking about your leveling and metering and knowing what meters. Is it peak? Is it RMS? What do we care about? Okay, so when you're recording vocals, what are you setting it to? And then you need to think about, okay, am I going to use processing or not? Am I going to, generally it's EQ and compression is basically all you do. Now, a lot of people say, should I record EQ and compression to tape or to, you know, record it into the DAW? People are like, I don't know. And I would say, if in doubt, don't do it. I don't know if I'm being too conservative here, But I have ruined back in the day vocal recordings because I didn't know what I was doing. So you can always compress it afterwards. If you can put it on and you can experiment with it, I would do that whilst you're training. And once you know and you're 100%, go for broke. Do whatever you want to do. But I would say if in doubt, light, gentle compression, nothing too hardcore. I mean, things like a high pass filter on the EQ, obviously that's a no-brainer. But hopefully you get where I'm at. So then we go to mic technique and the singer positioning. Okay, so I also touched on this in the first week about how it can be difficult to. Okay, so the singer's going da na 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 na, right, and you're trying to comp that together, and it's all over the place. Really hard to fix because there's different EQ, as well as level, as well as the compression, as well as things like the proximity effect, all that stuff, as well as the relationship of the ambient noise of the room and the direct sound. So it's important to, if you think that your singer might have bad mic technique, do pre-production with them. You know, it's the same thing as if your singer is maybe not a strong intonation or rhythm, do pre-production with them. Okay, that's always will be better because you get a more fun recording and you get a better result that you can make even better when you go to production and mixing. Then there's a question mark here, how to help singers sing well, and then how to manage the process during recording. So I want to put those questions out to you. I'm going to check in on the questions so far. Let's see what we've got in the chat. If we've got any responses. Oh, cool. Okay. So Shay's there. Hey, Shay, what's up? So Raz is saying C414, yes, at the gold-plated one, the UBLS, I think. That was my favorite for many, many years on my own vocal. Lots of votes for this 414. Yeah, it's a workhorse, that one. I used to work for AKG many, many years ago. This here is an AKG C3000 that when it first came out many years ago, it actually beat the 414 in the blind test that I did, but I've dropped it since. It doesn't sound so good anymore. Anyway, what else have we got? U87, yes. Through Neve 88 RS, whew, love it. U87 again, yeah. Oh, yes. Is it Pegasus? And Etienne gets in there last minute. Shure SM7B. That is my little secret hot tip. I love it. It's so good. I use it all the time. It's a dynamic. It's rugged. It's so great. They can be up close and then they can do really loud bursts, and the microphone can really handle it, whereas a U47 might not like it up that close. So those of you who haven't tried Shure SM7B, there you go. There's a nice tip from a few of us here. Cool. So let me also the next question, which is, how do you help a singer sing well? How do you get the singer to do a good performance? Okay, so I want to see some of your answers in there. I'm going to come back to it. Okay, so let's dive in. Okay, so editing a lead vocal. I'm going to look a little bit at comping, about what we have to do with comping, the idea about removing clicks and pops, pitch and rhythm adjustment, breathing, and sibilances. Okay, so let's check it out. Go over to Pro Tools. Are you seeing that? I think I have to go big screen. Let's go big. Yeah, cool. Okay, so this is the same track that I've been working on for. I just saw what Etienne said there. It's also the most. Hang on, let me put this up for everyone. It's also the most recommended for scream metal vocals. Okay, so that will kind of make sense, right? Because it's high amounts of SPL that's going in there. Cool. Okay, I'm going to come back to your answers there. They all look really good. Okay, so here's the track. It's a track I've been working on throughout the webinar. What do we got? Yes. Give it a go.
We started on Sunday, day and a half from rolling on, heart full of yarning. Here for the stories to be told. I'll take the train, meet you at the border, baby. See us alive.
Okay, cool. So this is the track. We are at the stage of getting the vocals right and getting all the spatial stuff happening. So the first thing about editing the vocals, I'll go to this other page, is okay. This is really, whoa. Sorry. I've been working in Logic all week with another artist, and all of my key commands, my brain is very confused. Okay, so the idea about comping is obviously very important. This has already been comped, so I'm not going to kind of go into detail with it. However, there was something that was missed, and just one little detail that I'm going to bring out is when I listen to this. Let me turn off everything for a second. Bam, bam, bam. And I'm also going to walk through that obviously in a second. So let's just see what we got here. Let's just do, and I also should turn off these bad boys as well. Okay. Raw vocal.
It started on Sunday.
Hang on, I want to get rid of my groups are not right properly. Sorry everyone for this. That's better. Okay.
It started on Sunday.
Don't know why the drums are still playing, but we can enjoy that. That's fine. So
it started on Sunday. A day and a half from growing old. A heart full of yearning. A head full of stories to be told.
Okay, so in this one, when I listened to that just then, I should have asked you all to listen in to give your, to kind of judge the vocal performance. In general, there's a really nice, rich, deep resonance to this voice, and sometimes the articulation between the pitch, the different pitches, I want to kind of accentuate a little bit more, particularly when I'm going to be building this up and want it to sit out as in a pop kind of sensibility. So I'm really listening in for that. The kind of tightness on the consonances and the ends of the words is what I'm thinking about. In addition to the fact that sometimes the breaths are big and sometimes they're kind of not there. I've got one example right here.
A head full of stories to be told. I'll take the train.
Okay, so that breath there, if I put my clip gain automation, you can see here, hopefully you can see that I have turned it down 4 dB. So if I bring it back up again, you can hear what it sounds like. And this is without compression. So once I put the compressor on, then it will really hear what's happening.
A head full of stories to be told. I'll take.
Okay, so breaths are good, and like if you're doing Max Martin, Britney Spears to circa 2000 stuff, well, they were accentuated, but they were accentuated in a really controlled and kind of artificial fashion. So if you're going to make the breaths really loud, the breaths need to be edited just like you would edit like or whatever, right? So I've turned that down. Now if I go to, I'm just going to put on my first compressor and have a listen.
A head full of stories to be told. I'll take.
Okay, so even with the compressor in and I've turned it down, it's still loud. Now the other thing that I noticed there is like when I put the compressor on, immediately the sibilances are really popping out. Let me play that again.
A head full of stories to be told. I'll take the train.
Okay, so that's in part the artifact of the compressor and the way that I'm using it. Let's just check out the compressor. I'm not going to go through this too much today, but these are the things that we need to think about. And I'm kind of going to, oh, hang on, you can't see this because it's in my other screen. Boom, there we go. Sorry, I've totally lost my train of thought there. Processing, I'm talking about editing, and then I'm kind of starting to talk about processing, because where we're at now, we can start to do we can edit things that can help our processing be better at the end. What I mean by this is perhaps I might use Melodyne to control some of the sibilances, to tighten some of the sibilances, amongst other things. So I've got Melodyne in here, and I'll turn it on, give you a little look. This is not a Melodyne tutorial, unfortunately. We can do that. Well, I've got to get paid by Melodyne people, don't I? Solemnity. But anyway, yeah. So I've Melodyned it, and things that I've done is gone through and adjust the amplitude. So I could have done this with the clip gain automation all the way through, which I showed you one example of it with the breath, or I could use something like a D-breath as a processing unit. So the idea is you can do different things. The main thing is you think about it, okay? So as I'm saying, breaths, sibilances, pitch and timing. What else did I have on my list? Removing clicks and pops and making sure that the comping is smooth. Okay, so that's what I'm doing when I'm doing my lead vocal processing. Now let's have a listen to it with the Melodyne on. Hello, did I just lose everyone there? I don't know what I just did. Anyway, I'm back. Hopefully you're all there still. That was weird. Yo, we're good? We're here? Yes. I think I must have pressed escape on the wrong thing. Okay, so what I'm looking at is how I'm going to process these. So let's check out what I did with my in Pro Tools. All this, okay. Hang on, I want all of those. There we go.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning, a head full of stories to be told. I'll take the train, meet you at the border, baby, see past the line, I know the guy who does.
Cool. Okay, so I just heard another thing there. The border, baby, was a little bit, I would probably bring down the B a little bit there. Now, would I do it in Melodyne or would I do it on clip gain? Doesn't matter. Either one works. So whatever your flow is, just do it. Like for me, when I start in Melodyne, I would just stay in Melodyne because my head is like, which one should I do? So if you're going to do it manually, just do it all manually in Pro Tools or whatever with the audio editing. Pro Tools is absolutely stand out superior in terms of audio editing at this stage. There's no one can beat me in terms of, no one can convince me otherwise in terms of other doors. It's just so easy and not annoying and buggy. But Melodyne, yeah, I like Melodyne because it's kind of fast and it's all in one place. So yes. Okay. So these are the really important things, is to pay attention to all that stuff and to turn things up or down and to balance it across the way using clip gain automation or whatever. So let me just stop for a second and check in to where everyone is at. I'm going to. So what do we got here? So I'm just going to go back to how do we help a singer to be comfortable to get a good performance? So what have we got here? Raz says, really get comfortable with each other, understand what they want to achieve, warm up, go through difficult parts, maybe play the intervals and insist on them a bit. It does depend on the singer. Yeah, cool. I like that. Definitely. So having a pre-discussion, this is like pre-production, right? But doing it before the recording session, I would say the day before or whatever is a good shout. That's great. And also maybe play the intervals and insist on them. Insist on them. If you don't insist on them, it's going to be out of tune. There's no shade in that. You're the producer. That's your job. That's what you're getting paid for. Or, in the future, you're going to get paid for. Pegasus. When I know I have a recording session, I usually record at my place first to get to hear my voice and problematic areas, loudness or breathing, so that I have more time and I don't waste it in the studio. So that's really good. So you're talking about when you're recording your voice and you get a sense of how you're going to do it first, so that when you go to, it's like a dress rehearsal. That's cool. Good, great idea. And then also when you're recording someone else, you stay calm and patient so the singer feels comfortable and their performance. That's a really good one. So about the psychology of it. I think also, now I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in here. Sometimes you want to amp up the singer. It's a psychology of performance and things. So there have been times where I've tried, not that often, but kind of tried to piss them off a little bit to get them going because they were being really like, oh. So it is a bit of a game. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I think, and also if it's a hype song and the energy is big, you've got to, maybe calm and patient isn't the way, So but definitely if the singer is scared or not confident or you know, still learning. But if you're working with a professional, sometimes you can be a bit experimental and kind of, you know, but again, this will come in time as you go with things. Yeah, and I think there's also on that, how far can you push a singer? Like I always think that you want to push them to see how big a performance they get. But the idea as a producer and as an engineer, well, more as a vocal producer, you've got to know when you've pushed, when they've given their best performance and they need to stop. Definitely. So you kind of, once they've got really good ones and you see they've plateaued or they start to dip down, then it's time, get them out of the box and let them chill, and maybe that's it. See how you go. But yeah, that's yeah, calm and patient is good though, definitely as a starting point. Ilva, hey, how are you? Try to make them feel comfortable. Try out different feelings on certain phrases. That's great. Really, really, really good. Okay, so this is this idea about locking into the performance and the emotional communication of it. That is a really, really good one. And to like, I think for me, what I would say to this before it is get some good takes first, get it happening, get them warm. And then once you've got some good takes, then be like, we've got some great stuff. Let's fuck around. Let's be experimental. What can we do? And this is a really, really good one. Like just give them like you're at their acting coach and be like, sing it like as if you're just woken up, or I don't know, whatever. Or as you say here, sing it as you're angry, whatever. Really good stuff. Great. I'm back. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what I did before. Cool. Okay, great. Good stuff. Okay, so back to regular programming. Any questions along the way about what I'm doing here, please remember to let them in. Yeah, cool. Okay. So, right. So just a summary on editing. Comp your vocals, make sure that you've faded every single little thing. If I zoom in, let me go into this and to my one little comp that I did. Is it faded? Hell yeah. Boom. Okay, so you can see the fades. Every single cross section has to be faded. Clicks and pops, the amount of clicks and pops that I get when I'm mixing. And the thing is, like, so I don't care about clicks and pops. Well, your compressor cares about it. So that's going to affect and impact the way that the compressor works. So think, you know, all of those little details do add up to something along the way. Okay. All right. Getting the sibilances, being aware of them, and starting to have a plan as you're listening to hearing maybe what are the problems are that you might need to think about with processing. Obviously, this is the important time to fix up the pitch and the rhythm. Yeah, okay. Let's go back to the notes. I don't need to go back to the notes. I'm going to go straight into processing the lead vocal. So I'm going to explain my chain to you. We're going to look at EQ, compression, and you start to have a little look at the spatial design. So, yeah, where are we? So I'll go into the other window now. Actually, let me just do, whoa. Go for that bit. Okay. So now before I press play, let me explain what's going on here. So my trim, we've got the trim from week 1, so that's all good. I put in a high pass filter straight away. I always do that. I just want to get rid of that stuff. I know I don't need it. However, I was careful with this singer because she has a low voice and I don't want to lose those low tones because they're so lovely. So be careful about where the point is, and also the slope. I made it 6 dB per octave because I wanted it to be gentle. And it's at 150 essentially. For me, I would bring mine up to like 200 almost. Okay, so yeah. Then I put in Melodyne. And then after, some people say equal power fade or equal gain. I don't understand what that means. I'm sorry, you'll have to ask me that again. Let me take Knockine's thing off as well. Okay, so I'll get back to the question when you give me more context for that. Okay, so then Melodyne first. Some people say that they do their processing and then they Melodyne. I don't like to do that because I like to, it's like for me in my head, Melodyne is like editing and I want to get that clean, and then I want to just think about my audio processes. So that's my reason for it, but you can do it either way, I guess. Then I'm thinking about some more EQ, and I found with this vocal that there was a real problem, and I think it's a mic problem. I can't remember what microphone. Actually, I think I recorded it on this because this was a demo or whatever. This has a problem. You can probably hear it up in that kind of 4K region. Sounds terrible. So I could hear that, and then I was like, we need to cut that out. And I don't know why I did a second hype cut there. Oh no, I did that because Melodyne brought in some weird little artifact thing, and I wasn't sure what was going on. So I had to put it in again after Melodyne. Sorry. Okay. So that's the EQ. Now I did that before my compression. I'm cutting out things. And also, if you remember from last week, I'm using EQs here that are transparent. So that are not really coloring the sound or anything. And there's not so much like really noticeable phase shift that is going to have this kind of smearing effect. So that's why I chose that. And then I've got a de-esser. This is the Eloise de-esser. I really like this one. I use a few de-essers, but this one I like for different situations. And then I go to my compression. And my compression is pretty standard, 4:1, medium attack, a medium fast release, and it's about, I think it's about 3 dB or something. And then I have what I might call my character EQ. I've got a 1081 because I love it. And what have I got here? Now I put a low cut here. The Neve low cut has a little bit of, in terms of the phase shift, it kind of reintroduces a little bit of warmth at the resonance point. This is advanced, like thinking about phase and EQ. Anyone's interested, I can give you links to research this more, but I kind of like that. So I think it was supposed to be on 150, but anyway, that's why I was experimenting with that. And then I have at 330, I cut out a couple of dB. It was, again, this room thing, this kind of like low 200, 300, like muddiness, because I was recording in my bedroom. And then it wasn't enough. And then I was like 470, there was it just sounded gross. So I cut out all of it. You can see it's really, really cut out there. Then the 4.7K, that wasn't sounding good. So the truth of what I did here was that I did this EQ first, and then it hadn't fixed the problem. So I went back in and put the RTA, the other EQ before all of the processing to really cut it out. So I've been quite aggressive with this 4.7. And then I did a subtle boost at 15K, just a little bit of sparkle, because I've taken away quite a lot of that for 4.7. And then I have my second compressor, which is an optical compressor, which is slow and smooth and luscious. And I'm just doing 1 or 2 dB, hopefully. I have to check in and see if that's still the case, but that's what I should be doing. Okay, so I did this chain on purpose today. Like, I kind of have remixed. I've been playing around with this today to give you specific examples of different ways that we can people approach vocal chains. So this vocal change with the 2 compressors is quite popular, particularly in pop music. So you have a faster compressor, and then you follow that by a more gentle, kind of slower compressor that's just touching the edges. So let's have a listen to it. And while we're listening, I'm going to check out some of your questions, okay? All right.
Started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning.
Okay, so this is nothing.
A hair full of stories to be told. I'll take the train.
Took out the 4.7 quite a lot.
Meet you at the border, baby.
De-essing.
See past the line.
Now you'll hear the de-essing
with the guy who does the door.
So you hear the de-essing when that compressor comes in. I don't know if I love this compressor, actually. Let's just hear it again.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning, a hair full of stories to be told. I'll take the train, meet you at the border, baby.
Okay, so that's interesting. I just put it to 8:1, and I like the sound of it better because it was only catching those top bits, if you noticed that. So I think I'm going to stick with that one. I'm going to do that again.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old,
Now you can hear that was quite a significant difference there with my EQ. Now when it's soloed, that might not sound, you might go, ugh, but in the context of the greater mix and the vocal cutting through and the double that is sitting with it, I think that the story will unfold a little better. So if some of you are like, ugh, what did she do there? Stick with me. It could be a little aggressive at this 470. So let me.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from work.
I think that's a bit better. I was a little bit excitable there. Okay, so that's an explanation. Hang on, there's one more thing to do. Boom. Let's see what this does.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yarning, a head full of stories to be told. I'll take the train.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So there's not really a lot of compression. Little touches, right? Little bits and pieces. Now you go, but the vocal sounds quite compressed. And that is because it's going to my subgroup, which is here. And I have a distressor on it, bus compressor. Oh, please don't crash. And then I also have mix bus processing on my master. So let's have a listen.
It started on Sunday.
So the ratio is lower.
Day and a half from growing old.
Okay, so this is just one vocal. With the other vocals, you'll probably get more compression. And then let's have a little look at my mix bus compressor.
It started on Sunday.
Cool. Okay, so I'll explain the mix bus compressor a little bit more. But you can see there. So now, how many times compression is there? There's 5 lots of compressors there in the way for the vocal to get to the final mix. But it's gentle. It's not too hardcore. Okay, so let me pause for a little second and let's check in on some of these questions. So Ollie asked a really good question here. I'm going to put it up there. Do you ever print after Melodyne or always leave it on the chain? Great question. Print it. I print it mainly because it eats up CPU, and that's the first reason. And the second reason is that I want to stop thinking about it. So, I want to kind of, once I've done my editing, I want to then mix, and I just want to be thinking about mixing. What I will do though, sometimes if I'm in any way unsure, I would duplicate the track, deactivate the one with Melodyne, hide it, and then like bounce it down, commit the, whatever it's called, bounce in place or whatever. And then if there's any funky stuff or if I change my mind, it's really easy for me to get it back. So that's my method all the time with my vocals until I'm really, really, really certain. And at the point that I'm really certain, as I go further along, it's one of my like moments of kind of decision making when I will go through and I'll delete all of the hidden tracks to be like, now we're 100% in the mix. I'm not thinking about anything else, if that makes sense. Yeah. Good question. So how do you decide whether to use equal power fade or equal gain? I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry. The different fade modes in Pro Tools, one of them is equal power. I'm sorry. I don't know the answer to that question. I've never used it. So yeah, I need to do some research on that. Great question. I guess I'm going to check it out. If anyone knows the answer to it, teach me, please. Anything else? That's all we've got so far. Okay. All right. So I'm interested for you. Let me know when I've just explained to you my lead vocal chain. Is that reminiscent of what you do? If you do something similar, let me know. If you do something different, also let me know. Let's share it. Let's have the conversation below to see what everyone else is doing, because there's definitely more than one way to do it. And this is not always the way I do it. This is just a kind of a popular way these days. And I wanted to share it with you because there was definitely a question about multiple stages of compression on vocals, I think in week 1. Okay, so I wanted to show you that. Now, okay, so we've talked about my approach to EQ, and I hope you can see that the way that I'm talking about EQ, it's not based on anything other than the sound that I have. That's what EQ is about. Listen to the sound that you have, deal with any issues that you might have, and bring out the qualities that you think are good, always. So, the only thing that I would say stylistically is if I want this to be more pop and shimmery, I would probably put more of a shelf boost at the end. There's one thing I didn't show you, which is on my Vox subgroup. If we go over here, I have my distressor. Then I have Harrison 32. The Harrison desk was the first desk that I learnt on a long time ago, 20 years ago or something. And it was petrifying because I didn't know what I was doing for starters. However, it sounded so beautiful. So I have a particular love and passion for the sound of Harrison EQs. They're really warm. They're gentle. Like they kind of do a lot without being harsh. Like SSL EQs are like chung, and also same with Neve. They're like hardcore in a different way. But sometimes I want to change the tone, but I don't want it to be aggressive. I want it to be kind of smooth and silky. Harrison EQ is my go-to for that. I think it's really beautiful. And you can see here I've done 4 dB push at 12K. So I've got that sparkle. If I'd have done that with the Neve or the SSL, it would be way too much. It would be too full on. Okay, so I've got a few more questions here I'm going to answer before I go into backing vocals. Shay asked a good question here. We got it up there almost. What's going on? Show. There we go. Okay. How different is vocal processing from genre to genre? Specifically, how would this differ in a more hip-hop context? Okay, so I think the answer is probably better geared to, like, because hip-hop has kind of become pop music now, you know what I mean? So it's really, hip-hop is really being processed like this way as well. The only difference is that if it's, so, okay, probably more aggressive on the compressor than I do, right? I'm quite gentle with compression generally. The everything else would be the same, I'd say. So, but the thing that I haven't done, and I agonized about whether to do this or not, but I didn't do auto-tune because it's just a big topic. And I thought Melodyne was a step in, but obviously rap, hip hop has got auto-tune all over it. And if not like Antares auto-tune, different uses of tuning, like using Melodyne and blah, blah. So that's a whole other topic that we can do at some point in the future if you're interested. So that would be there, and maybe not the optical compressor, maybe just a kind of more heavy-handed, faster compressor, and then the bus compressor. Would be my answer to that. Okay, if we're going to go to something like jazz, then jazz would have a much more gentle approach. It would be, you know, gentle EQ, nothing too surgical. You know, it's based on getting the sound right in the room, and the compressor would be more like, again, likely to be gentle. Something like an optical would be more expected, and no bus processing, for example. The mix would be set up in a different way that you wouldn't be controlling the sounds, because in jazz, the sounds are all kind of together, I guess, in a sense of the mix space. Yes, hope that has answered your question. If not, hit me up for some more questions. Raz is saying, do you use a presence track for the lead vocals, duplicating the vocals, applying heavy compression, saturation, etc., and then blend it with the main one? Great question. Yes, I do. Sometimes. So I don't like the idea of presence necessarily, because I think that, I mean, maybe this is just me, but I think that a lot of music today is overusing that, and it just hurts my head. I don't like it, but I do like saturation. I do like the harmonic coloration of like distortion and saturation and stuff, but I don't like it in the presence range, because the presence range is like that 3 to 5K. Blah, gross. There's enough in there as it is. So, and particularly when people are recording with budget microphones, it's already there and it doesn't sound good. So I love distortion, but I tend to go for lower, so that it's bringing out lower tones rather than the upper tones. Let me give you an example. Great segue there. Let's check it out. I have what I call chorus push. I'm going to get to that in a second. So, but just as you've asked the question, chorus push. And I have used this time a decapitator. I do use quite often the Culture Vulture. I mean, the other thing to say, like, I often mix analog, and there are certain things I think analog does better, sorry to say, but it is saturation in my opinion. And so the real Culture Vulture is just, even though the UAD one is great, is just not the same. And the same thing also, as we're talking about presence and push, you'll notice on my mix bus, I have got tape, because I'm a tape fiend. I love tape. I always mix on my Mix Plus. I mix to tape, real tape that is. Sometimes when I can't use it, I'll use UAD stuff. And the saturation, the way that it works with the vocals, and it kind of blends things together, so I can kind of push my vocals a bit louder in terms of like being a bit more like loose, I guess, and a bit extreme, and the saturation of the tape will kind of like control it back in, but whilst keeping it sitting on the top. So I love tape for that. And that adds this kind of presence-y stuff as well. So yeah, great question there. I'll talk about that more when we get to backing vocals. Any more questions there? No, not so far. Okay, so let's check in with the notes. So as I said, so I've given you my typical chain for lead vocals. We've talked about the approach to EQ, compression. I haven't looked at the spatial design yet. I forgot about that, so let's do that. So back to Pro Tools.
It started on Sunday.
Whoa, okay, hang on. I'm gonna get rid of my drums.
From growing old, a heart full of yearning.
Okay, so my vocal is clean and organized and sounding good. Then I am going to start to think about how I want this to be. So now this song, you've been hearing it for a couple of weeks. It's kind of moody, sensual, downbeat, groove, soul, that kind of vibe. And it's also about, if we listen into the lyrics, it's about like it's nostalgic and it's kind of remembering. And I think there's kind of being high and like being kind of in an altered state, whatever that might be. Okay, so it's supposed to be kind of a bit dreamy and a bit woozy. So I'm thinking about that when I go into thinking about my spatial design, and that's really important. I think I wanted to bring that out because, again, a lot of people, when I see their mixes, they put stuff on and it's like, well, that doesn't match anything. So it's like maybe a cool effect, but like, why have you got it in this mix? So really think about that. The processing has got to have a reason, in my view, that's kind of connected to the vibe of the song. So plus there can be other things, other jobs that it's doing, which I'm going to explain in a second, but it still has to kind of fit. So the way that I tend to approach my spatial stuff is that I like to have a tight kind of space that will help to push the vocal up a bit. Then I like, hang on, let me see, where am I with this? Yeah. Then I have a, so tight space, it pushes it up, which is like a small plate or maybe a slap back or something. Then I will have either like a kind of a tap delay, and I'll have a larger ambience. That's pretty much the way that I always kind of start out, and it tends to evolve as it will, but that's my starting point. So let's see the tight vox that I have first. Oh, hang on. Let me hide that question as well so we don't get confused. To see where we're at. Pegasus, I saw your question there, and I'm going to come back to it in a sec. Okay. So here it is with the tight.
It started on Sunday.
Oh no, I changed my mind. Classic. Where is it?
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old.
Okay, so there you go. That's me making a lie of myself. So what I had was the tight. Let me walk you through this. Okay, so I had originally, I had I'm going to recreate it. No, I'm going to do. Okay, so I'll do it this way. I had this one first, and then I had, what did I have? I had the plate. Okay, sorry, bear with me, everyone. I think it's interesting, hopefully. I'll go for this plate. And I also like to use different flavors and different plates and things like that as well. So I've lost can't get Raz's thing off. Okay. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm going to get rid of the H delay. Nope. And back to the plate. Okay, so I have a short plate, so something quite short. Maybe I'm going to bring in some pre-delay in a second. Let's check it out.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning, a hair full of stories to be told.
Okay, so something is ambienting there. I don't know why that is. So let me just try it one more time.
It started on Sunday.
Okay, that's it. All right. So that is my vocal plate. It's very short and it's kind of, it helps the vocal. You probably won't hear it too much yet, but it does help the vocal to sit up in the mix when there's lots of other stuff happening, because it's that slight delay in the way it comes back. Our ears pay attention to it. I can also help it to sit out more by increasing the pre-delay.
It started on Sunday. A day and a half from growing old.
And we start to get like a slap delay, right? So this is what happened for me. I started to get into the slap delay region and I was like, oh, actually I like the slap delay. Let me take this out of solo so you can hear what's going on.
It started on Sunday. A day and a half from growing old.
Now I'm going to turn up the vocals a little bit because they haven't got everything else in yet and they're getting lost. Okay, so let's listen again.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear that and it just helps it. I'm going to mute it now and let's have another listen.
It started on Sunday,
in,
a day and a half from growing old.
So can you hear that? It helps the vocal just, again, this is what I was going to talk about last week about dimension processing. This is not making the vocal feel like it's in a space, like floating around. It's making the vocal, the actual envelope of the vocal sound, if you imagine it as a physical form, like bigger. So it kind of just takes up more space in our virtual mix space, which is what we want, because we want the vocal to be able to cut through. So a lot of people think wanting the vocal to cut through, you have to turn it up and you have to compress more, but then you lose all the nuance. So I want it to still feel like, ooh, like this, but I want it to be sitting on top of my mix. So these are some of the ways, right? So that was one of the ways that this is what I would typically do. But then in this track, I was like, I kept on going with the pre-delay. And then I remembered this idea of it being kind of woozy and kind of druggy or whatever I had in my head. And this was too clean. The plate was too clinical. It wasn't working. So the pre-delay started to get this slapback thing. And then I had an idea of using the H delay because it has this really nice lo-fi and you can slightly like have this slight modulation. And I had it on my slapback, which I kind of don't want to lose this, but hey, okay, I will. I'll just go, remember 1/8. Yes, remember that, Jane. Okay, cool. So I went to a slap delay.
It started on Sunday.
Oops.
Day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning, a hair full of stories to be.
Right, so I went from the pre-delay to kind of, this is now like the pre-delay essentially with no diffusion, like a reverb. And then I was like, oh no, I want it to kind of like be a little bit lost for a second. So then I ended up with this and it really brought out the mood, I think, of the lead vocal. Right, okay, but that's too loud and then it's getting in the way. So then of course we have to turn it down and let it blend and let it get a bit lost. And I had to think about the feedback and really how long I want it to go on for. So let's bring that again.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning.
Okay, and that's how I made that decision. Okay, so that's my delay. That ended up being my kind of weird delay. And I might also bring in a little bit more modulation so it kind of goes off key. Let's see if we can hear that.
It started on Sunday.
Yeah, nice.
Day and a half from growing old.
Okay, so then now I'm going back to my other things is that I have a gentle kind of, I call this like my make it expensive delay. Listen to this.
It started on Sunday. Day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning, a hair full of stories to be told. I'll take the train.
And those two blended in started to sound really nice. And then I finally go to a large ambience because for this track I want that.
It started on Sunday.
Let's turn it up a bit.
Day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning,
I have it muted. Try that again.
It started on Sunday, a day and a half from growing old, a heart full of yearning.
Okay, so you can see that now I've got this moodiness going on. And that was a really specific, the way that I really thought about that. I hope by me explaining that to you is helpful in a way to think about, it's not just about a reverb, it's about the mood and the vibe and the energy in addition to how it's going to be working for your virtual space. I also decided that I wanted the 8th delay to be, again, to get more diffuse and get lost. So then I sent the 8th delay into my big ambience, as you can see there. So that's the total spatial design concept for my lead vocal. And that will inform my backing vocals as well. And that will also probably impact the way that I'm working and thinking about my instrumentals as well. Okay, let's check in with some questions. Oh, not very, okay, here's my mouse. I lost the thing a bit there. Okay, so what else have we got? So someone says here, Raz says, before hitting the first comp, most of the times I automate a utility gain plugin to even out the dynamic range. Yes, that's really, really good. So automating the dynamic range, you can totally do that. I'm kind of old school and I'm also a control freak, so I like to do it manually, but you can absolutely use these as well, the automation applications. Go for it, definitely. What else have we got? Now I've got to speed up a little bit, so we'll get into backing vocals in a sec. And Shay says, how important do you think it is to sync the pre-delay and decay times with the tempo? When would you do it and when would you ignore it? Very good question. I used to be really thinking about this, and I'm learning to loosen up a little bit these days. But so generally now I just go with the vibe. I just do whatever until I feel like it sounds good. But if I find that there are problems with, I feel like irritated or frustrated or that there's a messiness, those kinds of things start to hit me when I'm mixing, I will then start to look at the pre-delay and think about, okay, I want to time that. And then if I time it, it's like, oh, okay, that was the problem. So that's kind of the way I tend to approach it now. But it's a really good question for sure. Yeah, good one. The other time that I would say is like if you've got a track that's like really busy, if you've got lots of things, lots of layers, lots of instruments. I used to be quite like that and have like, millions of tracks. And in that case, I'm looking for every little space in the mix because I'm trying to put everything everywhere. So that was a time when I used to really think about stuff like that. Yeah. Also, if you're wanting to create, again, the converse is true. If you're wanting to create really precision pop music, like the kind of Swedish pop that has this kind of feels as though you're standing in this big icy space of nothing, that has to be, in terms of the way all of the tails have been crafted, it's all very precise to my ears. So I'd say that that's probably also a situation. So Etienne's saying, another question here, could you say a few character EQ plugins that I recommend? So my character EQ plugins, I love the Pool Tech stuff. Amazing, right? Amazing. Particularly the low push for kick drums and for drums in general of the EQP 1A, whatever it is. Sorry, I was just reading a question from Raz there. The Neves are amazing. The 1081s, also the 10s, all of it is good. The Rupert Neve stuff is really good as well. Obviously, API is really nice and kind of more precision. It's not got that grit that you would have with Neve. SSL is amazing for particular things, for kind of bright stuff. And if I really want to cut certain things out, the Neve, the SSL is very kind of like this. I don't know how to explain it. Whereas the Neve is a bit more fluffy. The SSL is kind of tighter, I guess. And then Raz is saying, Yeah, okay, so Raz does that as well. You sync the tempo even with the compressors. What's your thoughts? With the compressors, go for it, Raz. I don't do that, but I say, like, there's a thing, it's an art, right? You do you, man. If you're getting the results that you like, I think that you should go for it. With compressors, I really go for feel. So I look at the needle and I see how the needle is dancing and if it's moving in a way that makes sense. So syncing them in, if you're just thinking about numbers, you might don't forget, as long as you don't forget feeling, and numbers are secondary to feeling. It's all about how it feels at the end of the day. So as long as you keep that in check, go for it, do your thing. Cool. Now, another question. Have you got any tips to get enough top end in a vocal whilst keeping it from sounding harsh? That's a very good question. Okay. Yes, I do. Okay, so I think that so the top end, where there's quite a lot of range in terms of EQ with the top end. So for example, this vocal was sounding harsh. There were problems with it. There were sibilant problems. There was problems in the 4K region. And I really was quite aggressive in reducing them. So when I did that, though, I made sure that I compensated by boosting higher frequencies. Now, definitely not the ones that I took out because they sound shit. So I thought about what I've got available and what parts sound nice in the vocal. So if you see, let me go back into the vocal. Let's check these out. I've got that. All right, so 4.7 is down a lot. Then we're cutting out like the sibilant stuff, which is like 8 or 9, I guess, 9.5. Then we've got this. Oh, sorry, I've got to get them into the screen. Then I've got this, which is cutting out 4.7 again. Then I do a boost at 15 here, a subtle boost here, and then I have over on my mix bus, I have a push at 12, I guess, like a 3 dB push at 12. So that's my answer, is that the key thing is that you can identify where the harsh areas are. And generally speaking, it's going to be like from 1 to 5K, and it will be very specific based on the singer and the microphone. Be careful. Another tip is be careful about over compression or using the wrong compressor, because compressors can bring out the harshness. For example, when I was going through the compressor, when I looked at it, the 4:1 ratio and the way that it was working, I didn't like what it was sounding like. So I put it to 8:1 and I turned down the threshold a bit, and it sounded better. So like really listen to the artifacts that your compressor is bringing in. Yes, the other important thing I'm going to get to now when I get to backing vocals. So let's move on to this. Now we're almost at our hour. I decided to kind of get into the questions because that's what we're here for, is to help you out. So everything, I will talk about, we're going to go on for like 10 minutes or something like that. The backing vocal aspect of it is the same thing, but I'm going to lead from this question, because oftentimes people have vocals that sound harsh because they're building up the same multiple of the same vocal, which is the same singer with the same microphone with the same problems. So it's really important that if the problems are there, you find the problems and you get rid of them. And with the same vocalist, they'll have certain aspects of their voice that, the character of the voice. And if they're doing backing vocals, thinking about prioritizing what part of the vocal timbre you want to cut through. So let me now segue into talking about the backing vocals, okay? I'm going to leave the question up here as I go into this stuff. Also, sibilances. Now, this is the question. This question is probably the most important question of the day, and it's the theme of vocal production, in my view, is how to make the vocals sound lush, cut through the mix, but not then sound harsh, because that's what happens with everyone, right? When you first start out, you just can't get it right. It's either lost or it's too harsh and aggressive, and it's not nice. So the answer, really, Ollie, is every single thing I've done today, all of it. all of it. So from the editing, when you start to pay attention to the breaths, the sibilances, and you control and manage them, make sure that they're all at the same level. You pre-clip gain into the compressor, so there's no notes that are hitting the compressor too hard. You are really listen and make sure that your ears work and you hear the right, you're cutting out the right parts of the sound that are causing problems. That's a really big one when people don't have, and that's cool, you're all developing it, but maybe you need to do more practice to make sure that you're really making the right decisions with EQ. And that in order, if you feel like you're losing too much presence, then we need to think about, okay, so how do we make up for it? Where are the areas that I can bring some more back? And think about the not stacking the same timbre when you're going to be stacking vocals. So hopefully that was good and helpful. Okay, I've got another question. These are so good, all these questions. They're really, really good. So Raz is asking this question, and this is another big one. Do you sidechain other instruments to the vocals to keep things clean, especially in key frequencies? Now, I am not a huge fan of this because I think it's really, really, really overused. I think, yes, it's definitely a strategy that we have in our arsenal to use, but I would only ever do that if I've done all of these things and I know that every other thing is not working. Then I would do this sidechain with like dynamic EQ and making that, you know, when the vocals come in, it ducks the keyboards or whatever. But to my mind, that is an example of someone who can't mix properly. If you're relying on sidechain compression to clean up your mix, that's not mixing. So the sidechain compression can be really useful, particularly in dance music. It's got such a use, but if you're using it to do the things that like the EQ and compression and the spatial design and all that kind of dimension stuff should be doing, then it's not going to make your mix sound amazing. It might make the vocals cut through, but there's probably other issues going on with your mix. So I think that it's yes, definitely, but it's not the only answer. And don't let that be like your solution, is what I'd say. You can have it as an extra little touch, but it shouldn't be everything. Yep. Okay. One more question. Oh, hang on. No, here we go. Before recording and regarding mic checks, it might be a good idea to identify the timbral strengths of the singer's voice, and if needed, use more than one mic. Yeah. Okay. So there's a few things to this. The first part about the timbral strengths and thinking about the microphone is a big yes. This is a thing. If you come at the end of the day and you've got harsh vocals, you probably weren't using the right preamp or the right microphone for the singer. So there's that. The second thing about using more than one mic and being aware of phase issues, that to me is a big red flag. I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, at the end of the day, as I've said before, it's an art. You do you. I wouldn't do it because like I just think it's causing more effort and has potential hassle with phase stuff down the line. But like totally, there are times when that's appropriate. But as a standard thing, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. That's just coming from me. But it's a cool idea for experimental stuff for sure. Cool. Great, Raz. I'm glad that was helpful for you. Okay, so now we've got like a couple of minutes left. I hope that like me getting in and talking and chatting about about all these questions is the right way to go. Hopefully it is. Let me just give you a little bit of insight onto the backing vocals. Okay, so the same approach to thinking about the EQ compression applies, but then we have to think about them as parts. Like I think about them because I have a classical music background. So, and as I said, I'm a choir girl, right? So I think about them as like, oh God, what am I doing here? As if they were, I've got to unfreeze these. Oh yeah. Hopefully my computer's not going to crash now because I'm hitting it pretty hard. Oh, let's see. I've got the spinny wheel of death. Oh no, we're good. Yeah, I think of it as though, you know, from a orchestral point of view. So I'm thinking each of my vocal parts is now a layer. It's not its own individual thing and it's working towards it. So as you see here, I've got my my vocals, or maybe the better way to see it is looking at the backing vocals where they're being summed to. Okay, so they're all going to backing vocals. Now, to explain the chain here, it looks like there's a lot going on, but it's actually not, because I'm doubling up. So there's a plan here. So I have, obviously it's all trimmed. Then I have my high pass that's just going across the way. However, the high pass is at different points. See, that's a lower, and then on the high one, wherever it is, that's going to be higher, hopefully. Oh no, bad, Jane. So that should be, because it's my higher one, I want that to be higher, because I'm cutting out all of the low frequencies, but maybe I got a bit carried away. Oh no, I did it down here. Okay, I made it clearer. Okay, so this is my high vocal. I've cut out, where is it? 2K, because that was coming through on the mid one, and I've done a high shelf boost, and I've lost a lot of the low stuff. If I go to the other than one of my other ones, how can I show that? Oh, it's over here. Okay, see, this one has got a cut higher up. That's at 3.4, and it's the cut isn't as high. And then I've got a low one, which again, so you can see there's no push. I've still, because you can see I've got this problem with this frequency in this microphone. I've had to be aware of it and get rid of it. And the pass is lower. And I think that's it. Okay, so you can see that each of them, I'm carving out different spaces in the mix, and potentially with these low ones, I would go even further, and I might do. Oh, I did there. Okay, see this one here. I've taken down a dB or two of the high end because it's coming through on the other vocals. Okay, so that's probably the biggest tip I can give you with backing vocals, is to really think about the EQ and build it up. Like again, it's like a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. That will help you not have harsh vocals. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. Okay, the next thing to say is that then I have compression on each. There's a de-esser that I have on all of them. Now I'm using the R de-esser. I wanted to show you a few of my favorite de-essers. They're not all created equal, and I think some of them are really terrible, like the Logic one. Forget about it. Don't use it. These are two of my favorites, so I like that a lot. Then I have compression. Now I've put the de-esser before the compressor, not afterwards. I don't always do it one way or the other. In this instance, I felt like that worked better because I heard it. I just wanted to clean it up. And then I have the Renaissance compressor, which I really like. I use this. Now, the reason I use this is I'm going to put it across like quite a few tracks, and I want something that's not going to kill the CPU. And it's kind of a gentle compression, and I'm compressing again the subgroup over here. So I've got, when we get to the subgroup, oh, these are all coming on my other screen. Sorry, everyone. So this is my bus compressor, and I will definitely need to talk about that in a second. So let me give you a blast of the audio. Let's check it out. Hang on, wrong bit. Okay, I'll just talk about this, and then I think we're going to have to wrap up. I was a bit too excited about all of the questions about vocal processing. Okay, ooh. So here we go. Come on. Why won't it select it? There we go. We are starting something born of love and instinct, too young and wild to listen, zero more. Okay, now I've got to say, when I'm listening to this is a work in progress. There's still problems. It's too toppy at the moment. I'd want to bring it down a bit. But anyway, I can give you good insights as it is. So we've got compressors on individually. Now, I initially put the compressor on the subgroup, and then I found that there was too much inconsistency of the individual parts coming through, and because when it was recorded, it wasn't compressed at all. So I put the compressor on each of them, and it's like normal 4:1, medium fast, with a couple of dB gain reduction. And then the important thing that I want to say about compression is that over here on the bus, on the subgroup for the vocals, I've got a fast attack, and I've got an 8:1 ratio. And it's shouldn't be going too hardcore, But the reason for this is I want to kind of control all these transients a bit more. So let's hear this. I kind of want to bring in a bit more low end. It's sounding a little, oh wow, I really went for that cut there. Let's be a bit more gentle here. Okay, and when I did that, pushed up that 200, it made it work a lot harder. Okay, so that's, I kind of started to get it where it is. So this is the idea, is that this is clamping and is being quite tighter on it. The other thing I just heard there is that I need to do a little bit more clip gain automation before I start compressing, because there are certain notes and parts of the phrase that are kicking out, and you can really see it with the compressor. When the compressor goes boof, it's working too hard and it's not the ideal use of a compressor. So that to me says I got to go back in my production. My audio editing process wasn't up to scratch, and that's probably because I was trying to get this ready for you today. But in a mix, I would, if I heard that now, I'd go in and I'd adjust the levels again before I continue with my compressor. So this is an example. Okay, so the EQ is really thinking about piecing it all together. There's individual compression on each of my my individual backing vocal parts, and then I have a specific kind of way that I'm going to compress the group. These are also being summed in my vocal subgroup, right? So don't forget that it's coming into the final subgroup. Oh, cool. Okay, great. Shay's saying the questions are good. You've got different perspectives. Nice one. Now I've got some great questions for Ilva, and I'm going to make these questions kind of give a cadence to our talk today to end it up. The question from Ilva is, do you usually hard pan the BVs? I change things around. I guess I don't like to feel as though I do things the same every time, because then I stop being creative, and then my mixing, I stop doing things that are fun and successful as a, listening experience. So I don't ever do anything always. I do have tendencies the way I approach stuff, but in terms of hard panning the BVs, I often do, but with these, for example, I wanted them to feel as though they're kind of like as though people would be standing around kind of singing, and almost, if I were the listener. So I wanted them to kind of feather out. So that's what I did. And in terms of which part gets hard panned, so the low is hard panned here, and then the other parts are kind of varying degrees of panned, and the ad lib is slightly to one side. So whichever order makes sense, I just listen to it and think what sounds most musical to me. So that's the answer to that one. The left, center, right panning thing, I like to feather my panning, just generally the way it goes for me. And then, have you heard that you shouldn't push the highs on BVs to make them sound further away than the lead vocal thoughts? Yeah, totally, absolutely. So I would, if the backing vocals are happening at the same time as the lead vocals, definitely. In this instance, this is a chorus pass, and this is just, there's no lead vocal, as it were. This is the thing that's happening in the chorus. So I am approaching it kind of by, I want that presence to still be there. So, but that's definitely a really good one. I would say for supporting layers when there's a lead, this is a really great tip. So thank you for saying that, Ilva, and everyone else, listen to Ilva. She knows what she's talking about. Okay, Sarah, you've mentioned a lot in the last few webinars that it's important to maintain unity. And what do you mean by that? Sorry, I'm a beginner. No worries. Thanks for asking, Sarah. So maintaining unity is it's about keeping the levels under control. So basically, the best way I can probably explain it is if I go into my VU meter. Now this is going to see how good I have been as a mix engineer today, because I haven't actually checked this. My mix should sit hitting the zero pretty much once I've set up with my gain staging. Whatever I do in terms of turning things up and down and compressing and EQing, it should all end up kind of equaling this same thing. And if it's not, then I'm not maintaining unity. That means that when I use a compressor, I'm making it louder or softer at the end after I finish processing, and same with, you know, the other processes that I do. So let's see. This is a little bit of a test. We are starting something born. Beautiful. Love it. So yeah, maybe the vocals there, a few of this, as I said, a few of the phrases were kind of popping out a little bit. I heard that they were popping out, and I saw that they were going a little bit further than I'd probably want them to. But this example is that I should always, my master bus should stay where I set it up when I've gained stage. That's the idea, and that's what maintaining unity is. So hopefully that clears it up. Okay, everyone. Now I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to wrap up this 3-part with leaving you with a little bit of a piece of me, which is I like to get a little bit esoteric, and I want you to sit with this. Ilva, you know all about this because I know what you did your honors thesis on. I want you to think about, and when we're talking about mixing, we're talking about spatial design, but we're just even the whole process, because this is a time art, and it's a time and space art, because we're creating, either sound exists in space or it exists in virtual space and happens in time. So when we're working as a audio processor or a sound designer or a mixer or whatever, we're always working with the concepts of time and space, and thinking about the relationships between like phase as an occurrence of what it is, cycles happening at different two sounds at different points on their cycle, how that we use that to create a sense of space, stereo imaging, dimension effects like chorus and flange, and how that then moves to, you know, pre-delay turns into delay, and then lots of delay feedback turns back into reverb and diffusion, and away we go. So I think it's to me, I love, you know, hopefully you can tell I'm very passionate about it. It's so fascinating. It's so interesting. And thinking about, if you go a bit bigger and beyond what you know, I think it can really enrich your approach to mixing, so you don't just feel like it's like a cookie cutter approach. So that's what the last thing I have to say to you all. Check out Steve Reich phase pieces, come out particularly, and just turn off the light and like let it wash over you, and really have a real experience of this of phase. And thank you everyone so much for coming to these webinars. I hope they've been good for you. I've had a ball with them, and happy mixing. I'll see you later. Let me see, any more? Yeah. Okay, ciao everyone. Enjoy the summer. Get out. Ciao.